Right. Thank you, Mohammed, first of all, for inviting me here on your podcast. I think this is a great platform for youngsters to kind of see different perspective on different fields and learn and avoid some of the pitfalls from us in terms of their career path and what they want to do professionally in the future. So, thank you so much. My name is Sami Ahmed. I am working as a global product manager or head of a global product team for a company called Carrier. And I started this about 6 months ago and basically managing products group within the Carrier organization globally that deals with three different set of companies. So we have three different P&Ls that roll up to controls one single managing director, and I'm responsible for product and strategy. What does that mean? That means I'm responsible for all the product that gets launched in the business, to maintain it and have a whole product life cycle from the moment a requisition comes in or request comes in till end of life of that product and it gets discontinued. That means going through all the manufacturing, design, engineering, parts, supply chain, transportation, and then customer, and then end of life of the customer for that product globally. And then I'm also responsible as part of that, a strategy side of the business. So how do we structure the business so that it grows in different times, right? Now we are going into so-called recession. We're going in slowly, but predicted that we're going to be in recession by the end of the year. So how do we pivot that conversation now so that we are strong and be able to carry on when that recession hits later on in the year, right? So that's part of that strategy. And then also, how do we globally set our company for success in other parts of the region? So if we're doing good in North America, how can I grow in Australia? How can I grow in Singapore? Can I have factories over there? What type of labor can I get? How can I do supply chain over there? So that's all part of that strategy. And then how do people come together to make that happen? So part of that is organization behavior. So bringing culture across all different companies or different countries as well to make it successful, right? So that's all part of that. Cultural engagement is a key aspect, especially nowadays when a lot of the teams are remote and global, right? So having that understanding and making sure that there is no quiet quitting or burnout of employees, and how do we keep them engaged? And that's all part of that global strategy that I work on. So previously, my background is engineer. I'm a nuclear engineer, and now I work in totally different field than in nuclear engineering, right? So I will take you to that path as we go along in an interview. But it's interesting, and there are a lot of things that I left it to the God to make it happen for me, right? So you have to have that trust in God, and also have a trust in yourself that you can take on the challenges. And that's where I see a lot of the youngsters hesitant to not take on the challenges because they feel that they are unfamiliar with it.
Yeah.
So taking on unfamiliarity in itself is building confidence for yourself to be able to attack and be successful in the future endeavors or anything you do personally or professionally, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the skills you build as you go along. So just want to stop there.
So, bro, thank you, Brother Sami, for that illustrious career overview. I mean, definitely you've come a long way and have done a lot in the industry, which is amazing. And you did mention something, right? Like your background is in nuclear engineering, and I know that education-wise, you have a bachelor's in engineering, and then you have an MBA. So let me ask you something. You got a bachelor's in engineering, you studied physics. I feel like a lot of people get these STEM degrees and they think their only recourse is working in a lab, doing research and development. I mean, you know, where did you start your career after college? Or honestly, let me ask you even further. When you went to college, what told you, hey, I am drawn to engineering, I am drawn to physics, I want to go down this path?
That's I get that asked a lot because a lot of people don't really need nuclear engineers, or I specialize in what we call engineering physics, and that encompasses nuclear engineering, robotics, and microelectronics. And at that time, microelectronics was literally the the theory of using small mechanism to go and heal your body, as in medical field, right?
Yeah.
So providing medicine through small robots in your body through injections, right? So I studied that, and then all of a sudden, I changed the field completely. So how did I get into that field? I really, really have passion for space. If someone says, "Hey, you want to go to space?" I'll be the first one to raise my hand. I'm like, I don't care what happens. Whatever the mission is, if I need to go to Milky Way for next 1,000 years, I'll go. If I want to go to multiverse, I'll go there. But that's what attracted me to physics. So really having that passion. I was first year is common, right? In engineering, you go in, you take all your classes, math, calculus, and all that stuff, and
You
then
have
in
to
the second
develop
year you decide
you have to develop
what
the
do you want to be.
depression early. You have to develop the depression early, right? All the hard
Yeah,
classes right away.
yeah. So I have that, and then you go in there, take all the classes, and then you see, okay, physics really interests me, not because I wanted to go and work in the field, but because I wanted to learn because I had the passion for space. So, and I thought, what is the closest thing I can get a technical degree in, and as close as learning about particle theory, quantum mechanics, and then I went into physics. And I said, you know what? I didn't even think at that time, hey, I'm gonna go and work as in NASA, or I want to go and explore, some become an astronaut. Nothing like that. I just kept, carried my passion. I said, I want to learn more, and then I got into it. And then as I got into it, I didn't realize how hard it is, right?
I
And then all of a sudden, I'm like, holy cow, this is crazy. This is intense. And then I stuck to it because when you have that drive that you want to learn something and it challenges you, you got to push yourself to that
yeah.
limit, and you got to do that. You can't back off by one small hurdle, right? So that's if you pass that one hurdle, if you learn how to pass that one challenge in your early in your career and you do it successfully and you push yourself, everything else from there becomes so easy because you have done it once.
Yeah.
And then you can do it again and then again and again, right?
Yeah.
So I did that and I went into engineering physics and then I learned all these things in the, nuclear engineering, robotics, and I loved it. And then once I finished it, and I said, you know what? I had job offers already. I grew up in Toronto and I went to school in Toronto. So I had job offers right out of college. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go and attend a wedding in New York. And I came to New York. And me being someone who cannot sit in one place, I started applying for jobs in New York, even though I wasn't qualified to work here. I didn't even know what kind of market it was. And then I started applying for, obviously, in defense and all that stuff. And then people tell me, oh, you can't get into defense because you need to be a citizen.
Yeah.
Right? So that didn't happen. And then I started applying for jobs that I thought were cool to work in. So back in, early 2000, I'm dating myself now. Project engineer was a fancy title for engineers.
Yeah.
You're not a mechanical engineer. You're not like an electrical engineer. If you're a project engineer, you're a big deal at that time. Oh, you're managing projects and you're an engineer. So I'm like, okay, anything that shows up as the project engineer, I'm gonna apply. So I applied, and I got a lot of responses because of my technical degree, and they needed someone that understood technology at that time, have that engineering background, and also be able to manage projects, right? That's what project engineering is. So I went in there, interviewed, and I got a really good offer, which I didn't expect. So I took one. I just because it was, you have that feeling sometimes that hey, let's just try it, right?
Yeah.
Why not try it? You have the opportunities already back home. Why not try in a different country? I lived in Toronto for 10, 12 years, and when I came to New York, I thought that was a cool city, just similar to Toronto, but a little bit bigger, right? Very mosaic. And I said, you know what? Let me try it. If it doesn't work out, I'll try it for 2, 3 months. If it doesn't work out, I'll just go back after summer, and then I already have a job that's ready to go, right?
Yeah.
So I tried it, had the offer. I went into a company called York International. Now it's bought out by a company called Johnson Controls, which is a
Huge company.
HVAC and building technologies company.
Yeah.
And I started working as a project engineer. And I really liked it because it used your technical experience in engineering, and it also tied business aspect to it. So how does a project goes from one stage to the other end, and how do you manage it? What are all the processes? How do you get accounting involved? How do you get
Yeah.
sales involved? How do you get troubleshooting involved? How do you get service and aftermarket involved? So I really like that whole big picture concept, and I really thought that, hey, maybe if I don't want to do engineering, or if I want to continue engineering, I can continue this and go on and become a project manager, and then go to director of engineering, and then that's a career path you can take if you really like it. Or another career path would have been go into sales, right? And then build your career in sales and all that stuff. And then, or the third aspect would be go into service side of the business, right?
Yeah.
So I had three paths at that time, and I took the path of, after a year and a half of managing projects, I really hung out with the salespeople and really understood, okay, what does a salesperson do? I didn't even, I thought it was a car salesman, but it's not. It's really about building relationships. And those relationships is what gets you the sales. So I really like that concept. So all of a sudden, as you continue your career, you're going to learn and you're going to change, and you have to be adaptable in that aspect. You have to embrace the environment. You have to embrace the challenges that you get and see the opportunity you actually get in those aspects. So, and embrace it. So that's what I did. And I went into sales. And then since then, till last 6 months, I've been in sales, right? 14, 15 years later, in different capacities, in different companies. And that's what drove the whole aspect of how did I get from nuclear engineering to a company that's not related. Now it's mechanical. I concentrate. When I was a project engineer, it was a mechanical company. I didn't have a mechanical degree, but I understood the concept because I learned it in physics and
Yeah.
nuclear engineering and all that. Because you are supposed to take all the classes. I
Yeah.
even took civil engineering, right? So I knew the background, I understood it, and it's if you have an engineering degree, it's easy to adapt because you have that problem solving skills, you have that complexity solving ability to solve complex projects. So it kind of went with the flow.
Wow, definitely. Thank you for that. And it's so important because you went over your career and you went over how you kept growing. I mean, what skills you needed to get started, how you got started, and then along the way, I mean, how you grew. That's definitely key. And you touched on something that's very close and dear to me, which is sales is not always about car sales, man. I mean, sales is
Yeah.
about relationships. You need to convince people. You need to get them to believe in an initiative or a product, and that is not easy, right? Not everything is an iPhone that they fly off the shelves. I mean, you have to sometimes sell initiatives or projects and back them and explain them and convince the powers that be. And it you have to be smooth. You have to be intelligent, and when you communicate, they should leave knowing what you wanted them to know. Right? Your words should enter, their brain,
Yep.
and that's a skill. And I can tell you have that in spades.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out, right? A lot of individuals don't go into sales because they think it's hard, or it's there are things that they have heard or had misconception about what salespeople do, like happy hour, or whatever other things that gets involved with it, right? You don't have to do all that, right? It's about building trust with the person that you are selling the product to, making sure that you have their back when something goes wrong,
Yeah.
being transparent, being able to tell the good news and the bad news right away so that they can plan a contingency plan, right? And all that, it's not about going out and drinking and having fun, that gets you to some point. But after that, it's your word, your ability to cater to that customer and have that person's back
Yeah.
and help them out when they are in bad situation, or figure out how to improve their business. Forget about your product, right?
Yeah.
For a moment, think about how you can help them improve their business. Anytime they have a problem, who do you think they're going to call if you do that for them? You,
Yeah.
right? Even though you might have that product or you might not have that product to sell, but they're calling you, and then you can call other companies that have that problem. Now all of a sudden you have created a second degree relationship and bringing other businesses to your customer, and that builds another set of relationship that you can take on as your career grows, right? So it's not just about one to one, it's about bringing different types of people to help solve a problem at the end of the day. So that's sales in my mind, right? So just wanted to put out there because it's a very touchy subject
Yeah.
of, hey, I don't want to do this when I'm in sales. You don't have to do that. I never did it, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of preconceived notions, and it's very important to clear that up so people don't think that's all about, like you said, car sales, right? Or
Yeah,
selling something to people that they don't. If they don't need it, then you don't want to sell it, man. You don't want people getting upset. You're about building relationships, selling solutions to problems people have, right? Elevating them. That's a key
right.
thing. So, what you've had an illustrious career and you've had a great trajectory where you're constantly moving up. What skills or what value do you think people saw in you that they kept giving you promotions or opportunities? I mean, how did you convince them that you were the man for each job?
It's actually very simple. It's do what you say you will do, right?
Yeah.
If you say you're going to deliver something and you do it by this time, just do it, right? It's so simple, but a lot of us don't do that. We don't do what we tell others that we're going to do. We fail at that on a regular basis. And that really doesn't build any trust. As you cannot become reliable. You have to be reliable to anyone, not just your customers, but also your internal customers. You have, your peers. If you're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna deliver you this, report by Friday at 2 o'clock, it better be delivered by 2 o'clock on Friday or earlier. Because if you start slipping, then they cannot rely on you. Then all of a sudden they become, you know, very aware, like, okay, I cannot rely on Sami. I gotta figure out a backup plan just in case, right? You never want to be that backup plan. So that is number one. You have to have that understanding that if you're gonna say you're gonna do something, just do it, and do it in a timely manner and a professional manner. And then second, you always have to educate yourself. It's a learning experience. So don't think, yeah, just because I don't know something, I'm not gonna get involved. Pick up a book. Nowadays information is so readily available. You Google something, you get like 500 articles about that
Yep.
subject or topic. Just Google something, go to a well-respected site and read on it. Take that 15 minutes, 20 minutes, understand what that topic is, and then have that understanding when you're having that meeting with your teammates and your customers, right? So self-education on a consistent basis, not just through online classes or universities, just by yourself on a Friday afternoon. Hey, someone told me about what account receivable is. Let me just look it up and understand what that means and how it works, right? Just very basic knowledge will help you in a long way in representing yourself. And then, the third thing I would say is um, don't well, build relationship, but and don't burn them, right? So because if I look back at my career, a lot of the jobs that I got is through relationships that I had known someone 5 years ago, and they had an opportunity. They recommended my name, right? And the good thing about that is, yes, you're in their mind, and then they recommend you. But the most successful part of that is you get what you want. You
Yeah.
can negotiate salary, you can negotiate benefits because they want you. It's not like, oh, I'm applying for a job, please give me a job. No, it's now all of a sudden you can say, hey, this is what I want. Let's work it out, and it becomes such an easy process, right?
Yeah.
So in financial terms, in terms of your healthy lifestyle of living, balancing work and personal life becomes very important when you get recommended for a job versus you applying, right? So those are some of the three things that I would highly recommend. Do as you say, what you will do, build a relationship, and continuous learning is extremely important.
100%. I like telling people similar things to what you've said, especially your first 2 points, right? Like I've echoed them nonstop, which is make sure you can execute. Don't take a job you can do. Take a job you will do, right?
Yeah.
Because it is, um, people. at the end of the day, it's money. People only have so much patience. A guy who's not delivering on time is a guy who cannot be reliable. And in the long term, nobody wants to keep someone who cannot deliver, right? And then the second one, professional development. So this is a little bit bragging, but my father is a cardiologist, and he will tell me sometimes, Muhammad, the human body is the same when I learned 50 years ago that is today. They have no new
Yeah.
organs, no new arms, but you guys, the technology, like I don't envy you. Like I see how much work you're doing, and I appreciate that he says that, and he's right. Like the softwares are changing. I mean, the giants we had in the 2000s. I mean, I was talking about having a Sony laptop with some kids at the masjid recently, and they're like, Sony used to make them. I thought,
Yeah.
they just make headphones, and I was like, wow. Uh, so, professional development is key because things are constantly changing, and you have to change and improve just as, technology changes and ways of doing business are changing. So it's good that people who maybe don't listen to me or are tired of my voice are hearing, it's like ventriloquism. You're also saying my points. Like you have to deliver and you have to grow professionally, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. I mean, you're a director managing, a portfolio for your company, business lines, distributor teams nationwide. I have to ask, what is your day to day like? I mean, how do you run the whole machine?
Uh, Day to day, there's no set of things that I do every day,
Yeah.
besides meetings. Meetings are consistent, but the contents in the meeting is different every day,
Yeah.
right? So a typical day for me is, I start off at 8 o'clock because, one thing that youngsters have to realize is even us, we get carried away by working 12, 10 hours, right?
Yeah.
And we get burned out. And I really recommend, and really think about what your working lifestyle would be for a week,
Yeah.
right? From Monday to Friday. Are you going to work from 7 to 5? Are you going to work from 8 to 3 without any lunches? You decide what works for you. For me, what works is I start off at 8 after I drop my kids off at 7:30. I come straight, start the work at 8 o'clock, and then I set my meetings from 8 till 5. Right, that's my working hour. And anything beyond that, unless it's an emergency, then I don't respond because you have to set boundaries. Working because your personal life, especially after you get married and you have kids, though they're also important to you. You have to give time. You have to have that connection with your kids. So you have to set that boundary. So I just wanted to put it out there that make sure that you have proper work ethics, not just working wise, but also in
Yeah.
personal life, because you have to set that boundary. So I start off at 8. My day starts. I have different meetings. So, usually I have a staff meeting on Mondays. So, because it's a holiday today, I'm here with you. But usually I have a staff meeting at 9 o'clock where we gather and talk about what happened last week and what we're going to do this week, right?
Yeah.
And then I may have, after that, a meeting with one division talking about where the supply chain. Now, the biggest challenge that we have is how do we keep the supply chain and the factories moving in the production line to deliver to our customer on time. We have a target of 95% on time delivery. How do we keep up with that, especially with the supply chain issues that we've been seeing since COVID,
Yeah.
and still continues to happen? That so a lot of that concentration and effort has been to improve the supply, demand, inventory, and operation side. So we call SIOP,
Yeah.
and we carry that, and we have that regular cadence, and with our suppliers, with our supply chain analysts, with our customer support, and our factory plant manager, and we have that regular update. So we're getting that update. If something that's crucial, we start addressing it in the following meeting. If not, or if everything is going good, then my meeting is done. I don't have any action items. And then I also, work with one-on-one with my team members. So I have about 13 direct reports, and within them,
Wow.
they have different, direct reports as well. So I have one-on-one one day, or 2 or 3 people a day. So during that one-on-one, I talk about some of the challenges they're having. How can I help them, remove those barriers and roadblocks? As you grow into your role in your professional, as you become manager, or manager of managers,
Yeah.
it's become crucial to be a servant leader. It sounds so cliche, and it's a word that people use very loosely,
Yeah.
but I personally use it with a heavy heart to it, because if you are a servant leader, they're not working for you, you're working for them,
Yeah.
right? You're there because you understand and you have the authority to go fight with the corporate world, go and deal with and make things easier for them to do their job, and then makes it easy for them to success. And that's what you really have to do, is really understand what challenges and problems that they have and try to eliminate them or guide them in that direction. And if you can guide them in the right sense and they overcome it, then all of a sudden you become leader of leaders, right? You're developing leaders for the future that gonna succeed you, right?
Yeah.
You always have to keep that in mind, that you have to have a succession plan for your role. If you want to move to the next level, you want a best person in your team that can take up your role, right? And so I work on that on a regular basis, and that's part of the culture and employee engagement that I really concentrate on, because it's so important these days. Everybody's getting different job offers left and right, especially last year. So how do we keep the employee retention from going high, right? So this is where I make sure that's part of my day-to-day activity. This is a very crucial, important part of my life. So I engage my direct reports. I work with them for an hour, and then I go and attend a different meeting. Most of the time, I'm bombarded with meetings, unfortunately, because we live in a time where Microsoft Teams and Zoom has become so common because of COVID.
Yep.
Otherwise, I would be in an office and working. But if I don't have a meeting, then I'm thinking about, okay, what is my next challenge, or what is a challenge that I'm currently working on, and I start planning out. So I have two whiteboards here, big, that I draw still on how do I plan my path forward. What are some of the challenges my department is facing, and how do I solve it?
Yeah.
So I turn my computer off for an hour and I just go and work on the whiteboard. And that's where you do all your brainstorming. And I take that time every day for half an hour to 1 hour to do that. And then a lot of times I will get calls about customer issues or something that might have gone wrong, or the product engineering has delayed in the shipment, or the design got delayed, or there's a challenge in the delay, or we didn't get a certificate. So those are the regular activities that I do. And then the third, the other third important one besides team and employee engagement is really building relationship with people, with not within your company, but with your other side of the business, other divisions like HR, your boss's boss, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't interact and build your brand, then it's hard for people to know what your skills are.
Yep.
And
100%.
the next promotion, you're going to miss out on that. So networking is a huge aspect of any professional career. I earlier talked about building relationship, but it's also now at this point you really have to take that building relationship to next level networking skills. How do you network with the president of a different division? How do you network with your HR leadership? How do you network with your boss's boss? Your
Yeah.
boss's boss is never gonna attend regular meetings, right? So how do you what's an excuse you would use to go talk to him, right? And be mindful that your boss is not gonna mind that. So you have to have that open relationship with your immediate supervisor and say, hey, look, this is my career path. This is what I like to do. Right now, we just passed January, and this is where we did our yearly performance goals, right? So you have your company goals, and then you have your individual development plans. And within that plan, you plan out, okay, in 5 years, in 3 years, in 2 years, I want to be at this level, or I want to go do this, right? And you let your supervisor know, you come in an agreement, and you make a plan, action items on a quarterly basis that you deal with, so that you can connect with different people that you don't deal with on a regular basis. Every day, the people that you deal with every day, they know who you are, they know what your skills are, but it doesn't mean that there will be an opportunity within your department. There might be better opportunities somewhere else, right? So how do you build that, right? So that's another part of the weekly or daily that I think about is, okay, who can I contact that doesn't know me,
Yeah.
and what is my brand? So I work on my brand value, and that's very important. People need to know who you are.
Yeah. I always I like to talk about building your network, building your brand, and you know, it's if you meet someone higher up in the company, like your boss's boss you mentioned, Even if it's the first time you've met him, it should not be the first time he's heard of you. He's heard about your impact, your value, what
Right.
you're doing for the company, and that's the thing. I mean, if you're working in a company with multiple offices, you don't want to walk across town, take a bus to actually physically meet the guy, but you should still be interacting somehow. You should still be giving good, meaningful updates that show what your value is and how you might be even more of an asset in some other higher capacity. And that's the
Yep.
importance of a brand, right? The brand it does a lot of work for you, um, and it's important, right? It's key. And as you go up, I mean, I know the value of the brand as an individual contributor, as like an office worker, help desk technician 15 years ago. That did not have as value to me as it did today, right? Now
Yeah.
today, brand is so much more important as you move up.
As you build your brand, one thing we didn't address is your mistakes and your failures, right?
Yeah,
Because building a brand uh, entails that. And people are going to know that you made mistakes and you succeeded in some aspect. Hopefully, one more than the other, right?
yeah.
But you're going to fail. You're going to fail so many times. I failed so many times. And, I'll give you an example. When I started, when I was a first year salesperson, I made a mistake. And it was in New York City. I ordered a piece of equipment with the incorrect voltage.
Yeah,
So instead of ordering 208 volt, if you're technical, you know what that is.
yeah,
208 and voltage on an equipment that should have been 460, right?
yeah,
So the equipment got installed in New York City on a roof on a 34th or something like that floor, which means you got to rig it in, right?
yeah.
And when the electrician came to connect the power supply, he said, "This is the wrong voltage." So I get a call and I said, "What happened? Wrong voltage." And my heartbeat just skipped because that was $150,000 equipment.
Oof.
And
Wow.
to rig that in, which means to bring it from the ground all the way to the top, you have to get a crane,
Yeah.
helicopter and then close out all the roads in New York City, in a block.
Oh
That
man.
costs almost $500,000, right? So it's three times more than a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So the total cost of it was $700,000, and I'm like, I'm getting fired, right? Like right now.
Yeah.
So I go to my boss and I said, there's a job we got a wrong. Well, I ordered the wrong equipment voltage, and he said, okay, can you get a different product? How soon can you get it? He was really weird. I've never got a response from from someone in my life where someone was so cool, and he said, okay, go order a new one.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I walked out. I called my factory and said, hey, do you have this product with this voltage and how long is it going to take? And, it took another 3 weeks to get it. So I called the customer and said, hey, we can get it in 3 weeks. I'm really sorry. We'll take care of it. And then my boss that afternoon came to me and said, Sammy, you ordered the wrong equipment. How much is it going to cost me? I said, I got, provided this cost. And he said, okay, what did you learn from it? That was the first thing he asked me, right?
Yeah.
What did you learn from it? And I said, well, I need to be more careful. Like, by how? Well, you have to have a checklist. Make sure that other people are seeing it and verifying what you're doing so
Yeah.
that you don't make this kind of mistakes, right? So from there, I'm like, I learned two things. One, it's okay to make a mistake, right? But you have to own it.
Yeah.
You have to admit that you made a mistake and you have to figure out how to fix it, right? That's number one. The second is how people react to it and how you react to that scenario. My boss, maybe he was one of those individuals where he wanted, yeah, he might have done it himself, and he's like, yeah, he's a youngster, he made a mistake that's just similar, but for him to react in a way where he didn't burst out at me, he didn't, fire me, he had all rights to do that, but he didn't, and he said, that's your first and last mistake.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, right? And then you carry on. So you have failures. And then, as you continue, you're going to have a lot of failures. You're going to miss out on, projections that you said to your, VP, hey, I'm going to grow the business by X, Y, and Z, and you don't do it
I've done
because of whatever
that.
socioeconomic conditions, or you just didn't do it. No excuse, right? You have to own that. So you're going to fail. So my advice is own it and learn from it. How can I have done something differently? what can I do in the future if I have a same scenario a little bit different, apply those aspect to it, right?
Yeah.
So out there, because as you build that brand, people gonna remember you for what you did wrong more than what you did right, right?
Yeah.
So just have to keep that in mind, because if you made a mistake and you owned it and you fixed it,
Yeah.
people will give that example then say, oh, he helped me out, you know.
Oh, that's
So
definitely key. I mean, taking responsibility, accountability, that's very important. And it's something that kind of, it makes me sad when I'm mentoring someone and they're telling me they made a mistake at work and they're like, hey, how can I solve this but without my boss finding out I messed up? Or how can I
yep,
hide this mistake? Or maybe how can I kind of, I guess, confuse or spread the blame enough that it's not on me? And I understand they're scared, and I understand that they, failing when you're early on, you think of it as like this is a disability or handicap. Like once I mess up at work, I will always be like that guy who's not helpful or not useful anymore. But accountability is so important, and it gets easier as you move on. I mean,
yep,
it like you said, at the end of the day, it's not just okay, I messed up. Maybe boss will fire me. It's how do I learn? How do I make sure that there's quality? Checks, like I'm checking my work twice, like Santa, right? Got make the list, check it twice, and
yep,
and learn from it, right? Not learn to hide it, because that looks so much worse if you try to hide a mistake or you don't tell your boss and they find out for someone else.
yep.
Man, it's a headache, right? It's really really bad.
Yeah, it's funny because literally in December I ran into him in New York when I visited New York City, and we still have a great relationship, and he taught me a lot. So he still respect me. He was so happy that when he heard that I got where I am, and he was almost in his tears. Like you came as a 21, 22-year old kid to my office, and look at where you are, right?
Yeah.
And I said, thank you first of all, right? You have to appreciate him,
Yeah.
because when someone gives you that first opportunity, you got to be grateful to
Yeah.
that person, no matter who or she is, right?
Yeah.
So I was so grateful to him, and he was almost in tears to see, oh, someone who I mentored, is being very successful.
No, that's always a heartwarming story, and that's good. I mean, you want to see your employees grow, and you invest in them, and those investments pay off,
Yep.
right? And that's definitely important, and it warms my heart too. I mean, I dream about seeing people I invest in today growing in 5-10 years, and becoming VPs and directors and whatnot. Let me ask you something. You graduated college. I won't say long time ago. I'm also a long time ago, but you know what what do you think you learned in college, and not the technical stuff, because obviously that is very crucial. You come from technical background.
Yeah.
But what non-technical skills do you think you carry with you from college? Like, for example, it might be ability to research or manage people. Like you managed a club, now you manage people, or maybe speaking publicly. Like what did you take away from college that you still use today?
One thing, is really the core of everything you do is teamwork, right?
Yeah.
In college, you learn, when you're working on projects, how to be part of a team, right? Because in high school, you really don't get that opportunity. But I think in college, when you have the thesis project or labs, that you're fully independent.
Yeah.
Whereas in high school, the teacher will always be there, kind of guiding you and all that stuff, telling each of us, what you're going to do. But in
Yeah.
college, it's totally different, right? So you learn how to really work in a team. How do you assign work to each other? How do you hold each other accountable? How do you encourage and give that push to each other, right?
Yeah.
You learn that through team building, and that carries over till, I think, in your professional life and in your personal life,
Yeah.
right? That's a soft skill that I really build. Like, how do I work with teams, different individuals from different backgrounds? How do I respect their views, right? Because a lot of the time we have preconceived notions that if you are coming from this background, you're always going to be that type of person, or if you are an Indian, you're going to have a thick accent, and
Yep.
you're going to spell color with a U and all that stuff, right? But it's far from what that preconceived notion is, right? So you have to listen and understand that people have different backgrounds, they have different views, and it's not like they're right or wrong. and you have to work with them. And how do you work effectively with them to get a task done? That's a soft skill that I really love and learned in college. The other thing that I really understood at that time was, when you're in high school, you're, joking around and doing all the crazy stuff. But in college, and as you go into the first 2, 3 years of your career, you have to know who your audience is, right?
Yeah.
You cannot just blurb out stuff to everyone the same way you would do with different individuals. So you really have to focus who you're talking to, understand that, hey, this person is a professor, and this person is your mentor, and this is your TA, and this is your best buddy. So your conversation with your best buddy and the language that you use is going to be different than the language and the and your behavior with the professor, right?
Of course, yeah.
Or with your boss. So you have to really know who your audience is. If your customer, is it your supplier, is it your internal customer, is it your boss? So you get that skill in the college, where if you have that in your mind and say, hey, who am I talking to? Am I talking to my best friend, or am I talking to a professor?
Yeah.
And how do I convey my messages and my thoughts to that audience so that that person can understand me?
Yeah.
And you get that soft skills from that, and it carries on again. Even in, you see that in interviews. So if you know, see, if you're doing an interview and the person is asking you these some interesting questions, okay, this is how you respond to this person because he's thinking about that. You get that after, a few years of thinking about it on a constant basis, is who is your audience, right? So I would say that's the other thing is, understanding who your audience is also part of that learning curve in college, because college is huge. I mean, thousands of people, just like work, you have to be careful as to, not careful, but you have to be mindful, I should say, right?
Yeah.
Of who you're talking to and how you convey your messages and your ideas and how you become successful by doing that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's very key. Is I, for example, when I'm talking to stakeholders, we joke about elevator pitch. My CEO only wants to know in 60 seconds or less what we are doing, what's going right, what's going wrong, and how can he help, how will he impact us. That's going to be different conversation than when I'm talking to our engineers and they're building something. And then again, if I'm talking to our customers or external stakeholders, I mean, they're getting, different levels of information or different approach, so your audience definitely matters, and how you speak to them again is key, and it's important, right? That separation is important because I think it helps you become a better negotiator, better speaker when you shift your approach to the audience.
Yeah, and in college you will learn what you're good at and what you're not good at. I learned third year I hate programming, and I never touched it till now, or I still don't touch it. Right, like that's you will know where your strengths are and your weaknesses are, and you have to find work around that. So I don't I the last time I did programming was how do you write if sentence, right? That's
Yeah.
very basic, and I still failed at it, and I still don't know how to write it. So to me, that's a skill that I don't have, and I learned it in college. And I'm like, yep, I don't have that skill. I'm gonna leave it because I will never learn it. There are some things you will just have to say, nope, this is not my cup of tea, and just leave it and admit it and accept it and move on, right? So
Yeah.
I did that. There are a lot of things you will learn what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah.
So that's part of that learning side.
So what motivation or what inspiration can you give people who are graduating college in a time which, by the way, is very scary? I mean, I guess it's similar to the 2008 crash. I mean, people are graduating college and the jobs that were promised to them when they started 4 years ago are not waiting for them. How can they stay motivated? How can they stay inspired and consistent on the job path? I mean, how can they avoid burnout? What advice do you have?
You know, that's a very challenging question
It is.
in challenging times, right?
Yeah.
But the way I approach it is um, keep going. It sounds so simple, but don't lose hope, because
Yeah.
if you don't get one job, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get the other, right? Just
Yeah.
because you think that this job is the best job that you can have, this is exactly what I want to do, and this is going to get me to places, but God will have different, better plans that you don't see, right?
Yeah.
So in a month later, you might get a job that's going to benefit you a lot more than what the first one would have benefited you, right?
Yeah.
So when you're getting out of college and you're applying to jobs, the first thing you should do is think about what industry or target companies that you want to work for, right?
Yeah.
And then figure out, okay, do I have any connections with that company employees, right? So is my uncle's cousin's nephew, sister's brother-in-law works there, then go approach that person, right? Figure out who works at that company that you want to go work for, right? So you have to do a little bit of research. You can't just go on online and start applying for jobs. So first think about, recruiting on campus is, standard, you know how to do it. But then the second aspect is if you target some companies and figure out if someone works there or not, and then if you work if you figure out who works there, then you can go through that person. If there's no one that in your network that works there, then you have to really look at the jobs openings that they have and really apply to job that best fits you. So read the description, right? What the job requirement is, but more importantly, what that role responsibility is.
Yes. Yes.
So people don't really look at role responsibility, they look at job requirement. Job requirement will say, bachelor's degree, 2 to 3 years of experience, must be able to travel 50%, done.
Yeah.
But role responsibility tells you what you will be doing and if you're going to be successful or not in that job,
Yeah.
right? So you have to really understand what that means. And those interview questions that you get, you have to relate to that and bring that, college project out that showed that responsibility. If the responsibility says being able to, launch a product to the market, you have to, show that experience with the project that you did, and how did you showcase that to your professor? How did you tell that professor what that project is? Right? It's basically launching to a market, similar, right?
Yep.
So you can relate that skill to that job interview. So
That
think about that and really focus and then apply, right?
that
And
is
make
so
sure that
important.
your resume it's not standard.
Yeah.
You have to cater that resume to that particular job. Make sure you have a cover letter. I get so many resumes, and no cover letter. The importance of cover letter is really to show your brand, right?
Yep.
You as a graduate of a fresh graduate, you also have a brand. You did some stuff in college, right? Showcase that in your cover letter, right? That what is the best way of you talking to me on an application is through a cover letter. So have a cover letter, even if it is, a couple of sentences, just put it there and attach it with a resume and then send it out. It makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
So I would do that. And then, the economy is, it's shrinking at some point, but at the same time, a lot of people, especially out of college now, they go after big tech companies, right?
Yes.
They go for
Yes.
Google, TikTok,
That's what they're doing.
Meta, whatever it is, right? It's all about tech. Look what's happening in tech industry.
Yeah.
12,000 people out of Amazon, or 6,000 out of this, that, right?
Yeah.
In my industry, in other industries, there are two things that I've seen in the last 16, 17 years: less layoffs, and consistency on jobs, longevity. I have people working in the same company. I can, the average tenure at my company is 26 years, average,
Yeah.
right? That means people have been here for 50 years. I've seen, a service announcement came out as 55 years. The guy started working when he was 16 as an assistant or technician, and now, 55 years later, he's still with the same company, same city. Never got laid off, never had, all the turmoils. He has seen through it, right? So these companies are very stable because they've been around for 100 years, 150 years, right?
Yeah.
So don't think that, oh, you have to go work for a tech company. These companies are also out there where you can go and get a really good job, and it really pays you well, to be honest.
Yeah.
You think tech companies pay you well? We pay well as well, right? These, building technology company, HVAC company, or, they are paying well to these guys. So diversify your search. Don't just go after what everybody's going after. Differentiate yourself, right? Think about what is other revenue. Because in these times, tech companies are not hiring. where are you gonna go if you just think about that, right? So just go and diversify and look at different companies, and don't lose hope. You're gonna get there, and be positive, and be able to move to a different city if you find the right opportunity, right?
Yeah.
A lot of youngsters, if I grew up in Toronto, I only want to stay. No, I took a chance in New York. Now I'm in Dallas. So you got to be able to be flexible, especially at right out of college where you don't have ties to that particular city, on a with a family or other things. So you have the mobility that unfortunately we don't have now. So I would highly encourage youngsters to take up opportunity in those remote cities where you can excel a lot faster than being in a Silicon Valley where thousands of people are trying to run, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to squeeze your way in. That's going to be a challenge. Where if you're in a smaller city, you can get up there faster than before.
You echoed things that I believe, which is like you just said, go somewhere where you can be big fish in a small pond, and
Yeah,
move now before you have the family. Not to say push it off or anything, but move now while you can. I mean, it's easy for you to just sublet, get the apartment, get the roommate, and build yourself now versus later. Then you're gonna be like, oh, I wish I had built myself, take opportunity. And our parents crossed the ocean. I think we can cross
yeah,
few states for the job, right? Like we can.
absolutely, absolutely.
And you mentioned something that's so critical, which is don't apply to the sexy job. Don't apply to the sexy code. Let me tell you, if someone told me, Mohammed, you can either be without the air conditioning for a day or without Google for a day, I'm getting a book and I'm getting the air conditioning. Okay, go
Yeah,
for the companies that they are solving real problems that people need. Right? Air conditioning people need, healthcare people need, right? And manufacturing people need.
yeah,
No one has ever said, yeah, I'll stop using toothpaste or shampoo. L'Oreal.com. Regardless, look at the
yeah,
company. Do people need it? Phones are amusing. And technology is amusing, but you know what, man? If Uber got expensive today, people would start biking, right?
yep.
So that's why Uber, Chrome, Google, Microsoft, they're all at the end of the day, they're conveniences, but they're not necessity. Go to where the necessities are, right? That's where the
Yep.
stability, like you mentioned. I mean, I see manufacturing, paper companies, shampoo companies. Their tenures, like you said, it's like 20 plus years, and they don't let people go because it's not that people
Yep.
wake up one day and said, you know what, I don't need the heating. In New York City, oh my God, that's never gonna happen.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. You got it.
So thank you, brother Sami, for making the time. I mean, you work at a high level. I understand that this was definitely valuable, and I appreciate that you're giving back to the community. You're sharing your story and giving some pearls of wisdom to the next generation. And inshallah, if you have any closing comments, something last to say before we stop, I'll let you get it out.
Yeah, no, first of all, again, I want to thank you for inviting me here, and I commend you for, again, doing this. The other advice I have is reach out, right? Whoever is listening, and if they need further clarification or if they need help, reach out to you, reach out to me.
Mm-hmm.
We will do what we can as individuals to help that person out,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
No matter who that is, because at the end of the day, we're all servants at some, all the time, right?
Yep.
Either to God or to ourselves or to our family. And what's better than making other people's lives better? So
Right.
just want to leave it at that. And really, anything else, please contact me on LinkedIn, and I'll be able to guide you if you need any help.
All right, and thank you, Brother Sami. I'll be dropping your LinkedIn in the summary section below so people can get in touch with you. And likewise, like I do with all my podcasts, I'll be dropping my information so people can get in touch with me. And inshallah, we, our senior people, we want to give back. We want to help you, and
Absolutely.
inshallah, we'll do whatever we can. So thank you, Brother Sami. Inshallah, I appreciate this, and I'll let you enjoy the rest of your President's Day.
All right. Thank you, Mohammed. Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, thank you as well. Assalamu alaikum.